Hey everyone. First of all, thank you for all of your sweet responses to my last video. I am briefly stopping back in Ashland, so some of you might recognize this from older videos. It's a place in the home temple that I haven't been in for a while. Anyway, thank you. It really means a lot. Um, what I wanted to talk about today in the video is how and why I restore my virginity often. And originally I wanted to make a video that related more directly to the upcoming The Unburdening of Witch, that is the next in the Grace Walker series. So that's not really what's happening today because this is what's more alive for me. But I will say that there's a way that what it is to restore virginity and the art of that and the wisdom of that and the way that that works, to me, actually is a place where lover and witch intersect in terms of where we are in the series, where what it is to be lover and to really embody sexuality fully requires the arts of the healer, the arts of the witch, the arts of the healer, it requires nature, it requires natural law and pure elements. So that may seem vague, but in my world right now, there's an intersection happening. And because I've been in a phase of restoring virginity, I wanted to speak to it for a minute because I think it's one, to me, it's actually one of the things that the mystery school holds that is most, it's one of the treasures, right? It's something that we're doing all 9 months, and then we focus on in some specific ways throughout. Restoring virginity. Most of us don't even think about it, or we don't do it. It's not anywhere. It's in ourselves, but it's not necessarily in our remembrance yet. And that comes from a lot of things, right? One is the misunderstanding that virginity equals not ever having had sex, that there is a purity that somehow can be lost. Incorrect. There is an incorruptible purity that can never be lost. It's incorruptible. And when we restore virginity, we return to that. The reason that it's connected to sexuality is that there is a way that the female body, the female being, needs to contain, seal up, empty out, and have time cultivating sexual energy, desire, the heat, the vitality, and not sharing it in order to restore virginity, right? So it's interesting the way that things get moralized. And somewhere in there is actually something really powerful and true, but it gets so far away from that, right? And all the moral dilemmas around virginity, all the gestures of control around female sexuality, all this stuff. But somewhere in there, right, we step off the pendulum swing. We're not reacting to repression. We're not allowing ourselves to be repressed or controlled. And underneath, we can ask the question of, is there something valid in that? The instinct or the movement towards preservation of a type of virginity. Woman one unto herself, right? That is what it is to restore virginity. And in deep feminine tradition, in the wisdom stream, in that still intact, but sometimes often, or maybe often occluded, knowing that we all have, we will instinctually move towards restoration of virginity, right? As long as we're not too confused. So restoration of virginity, it is a restoration of you as a pure element because there is no one else inside of you. And your desire isn't being pulled one way or the other. The yearning that is natural and the desire starts to cycle inside of us for a little while. And we do that, obviously this is something that I can't really speak fully to in a 15-minute video, but what is the movement of it? The movement of it is to close the doors, to close the curtains, right? To seal up the womb, to disallow anything from penetrating for a period of time, right? In order to cultivate. And that is what is important here. One of the important things is that when we restore virginity, and a lot of you, okay, so I've had a really non-sexual period of time in my life, which is actually pretty uncommon for a while. And what has been happening is that my body, my being have desperately and deeply needed my own energy. And it's just, my body hasn't responded sexually in any other way. There's been something else moving, and something else that my sexual vitality has been nourishing in my being. And in some ways, it's been very much under the surface. So what may be happening, and what I think does happen for a lot of us, is that we'll have these periods of time that we call non-sexual. Or maybe we're confused, or maybe we're upset and we don't understand why we don't want to have sex, or all the things, right? And what's really wanting to happen is this restoration of virginity. It's a cultivation of energy, a cultivation of essence, right? In order for, I mean, this is how, part of how we heal our own bodies and our hearts and our spirits is with what our sexuality contains, which is our essential blueprint and our essential nectar, right? So when we feel that, though, a lot of what happens, I think, is that we just think to ourselves, oh, I'm just not sexual. Like, some people will have this idea that they're just not a sexual person because they haven't, they don't think of themselves as a sexual person, or they don't think of themselves as sexual for a period of time. And that can be painful sometimes for people, and there can be a giving up in that, right? When we restore virginity, we do it with the understanding that we're cultivating, so we don't fall. So there's a way that when you stop touching into your sexuality, you can become dry, brittle. There can be a certain desiccation that happens, and a certain way in which we stop touching something that's really important, which is our essential sexual nature, the nature of yearning, the nature of desire, of being met, of receiving, of being moved, of everything that is, right? It's something we need to touch in our lives for our entire lives, because it's what keeps us supple, and it keeps us in touch with something very alive and very important. However, it doesn't always express explicitly sexual, and it's not always, when we seal up and we say, okay, this is a time to restore virginity, if we can know and consciously intend that that's what we're doing, it makes a huge difference. We're unconsciously doing it, I think, actually a lot. But because we're doing it unconsciously, then we don't really lean in to the movement that's wanting to happen. So we're not cultivating. We're just kind of going dormant, right? And we're just kind of letting it go, or whatever it is, or we're allowing ourselves to be confused, or whatever. We're making excuses. We're not just making it a power move. Make it a power move. If you're not feeling sexual, or if you feel like, and you're confused by it, just consider making it a power move and choosing to restore your virginity, to come back fully, to seal up, to remember yourself as one unto yourself, and to touch into the essence of your yearning and your desire and that fire inside of you for her own sake. Not connected to anything else, not being drawn on by anything else, not being kind of catalyzed by anything else. So you come back in and you check in on that fire, and it might need some tending, right? It might take some time, but this is a cultivation time. And ultimately, even if it's with a choice for celibacy, what wants to happen in the female being is that we become more and more saturated, juicy, supple, yummy, nourished, moist, like lubricated throughout our entire being, as the longer that we're in a virginal state, the longer that we're in this contained state. Right? This is not the kind of portrait of the dried up, or the kind of boring or whatever it is, well, all those portraits that we have, you know, it's a different portrait than the exuberantly, explicitly sexual portrait that we're often fed of what a healthy, vibrant female sexuality is. But restoration of virginity and times of virginity and times of sealing up, times of coming back in like this and cultivating in a certain kind of pure element way are very much a part of a healthy, sustainable, discerning female sexuality, right? So I offer that. I mean, yeah, wherever you are in your world, I just feel like restoration of virginity is one of the mysteries. It's one of the teachings that is really important for us to have and to claim and to understand deeply, because it's what brings us home again and again. It's what makes it safe for us to be sexual creatures in this world. We're going to be confused. We're going to make a lot of mistakes, and we're going to learn as we go. And if there's not a way for us to come back in and restore wholeness, clear it out, come back to the incorruptible, you know, come back to one unto ourselves and really repair and restore, then it makes life and sexuality and relationships really intimidating, actually, right? And we can get either reckless or shut down in that. So I invite you to just consider it. It can be it doesn't have to be forever. And I personally, you know, I personally don't make time commitments around it. I don't say, oh, well, I'm going to restore my virginity and therefore not be in any kind of explicitly sexual exchanges for a year or for this long. I don't like to do that to my being. I don't like to put external, that kind of external control on the living force that is my sexuality. However, I do my best to listen, you know, and to, you know, one of the things I think is tricky about restoration of virginity is if you understand it as a time of cultivation. And I understand there's a lot of there's a lot more to this than what I'm sharing here, but if you understand it as a time of cultivation, what's going to happen at a certain point is you're going to start to plump up in the way of like full of that luminosity. Like you're going to start to fill up, and and then after, you know, there's this kind of process to restoration of virginity. It starts with sealing things up. That may actually feel very fallow. You may feel very fallow at that time, because it's often, restoration of virginity often needs to happen, and we're drawn to it when we're very depleted, confused, or we've gotten hurt. You know, that those are some of the times. So often when you begin in a restoration time, you'll start fallow. You'll start kind of either depleted or deeply quiet, reflective, in pain, you know, emotional pain, spiritual, you know, whatever. That's gonna be where it's gonna start. Well, as you cultivate and continue to turn towards yourself, at a certain point, the flame is gonna come back to life. And that's a tricky place, because you wanna see how much you can contain. You know, it's gonna want to find its meeting, because that's what it does, right? And so you just see at that point, like, okay, how long can I be this full, right? And, you know, restoration of virginity, it's not just something either I consider that you do when a relationship ends or you're not in a relationship. I think it's actually a really important thing to do regularly when you're in a relationship, because we must come back to ourselves. There's a unified field created, especially if you're in an intimate relationship with someone. And if you do not restore your one unto yourselfness, then it's inevitable. There's gonna be a loss of that. We need it. You know, we just need it. And it doesn't mean anything other than that. And then every time we come back from that place into our intimacy, we are renewed, we are more discerning, and we are less burdened, right, by all sorts of things. Because when you contain and cultivate your energy like that, it will start to metabolize Not, and you'll start to clear out and actually metabolize some of what has accumulated in our beings, specifically in the womb, right? So this is just a consideration of restoration of virginity. I mean, I do a whole bunch of things when it's time for that for me. For instance, I just spent 10 days in the wilderness, generally. I wasn't out in the back country, but I spent 10 days with pure elements, pretty much alone, and I just emptied, and I just, that's an important part of it for me. It's important that I haven't, a lot of it for me this time has just been that, just going and sitting and being in a relational state with nature. Nature is very attuned, and I need to be in relationship. I need intimacy still. And that's one of the tricks with restoration of virginity. You don't want to, if you pull out of an intimacy, but then you have no expression, no outlet for your need for intimacy, it's going to become very hard, to really hold that state. So I went to a place where I feel intimacy with all things, and I can feel all creation making love to me, right? So hence why I say it is actually a very sensual state on the continuum of sexual. It's not the absence of sexuality. Womb clearing, there are practices too, right, that assist with these things. What I would leave you with are 3 statements. So I was like, all right, what are some statements that to me come from the state of a restored virginity, And let me remember what they were. One is, and I just offer these to you. You can just kind of roll them around in your being and see how they feel, right? Try not to make too much of them or extrapolate them into very much. Just roll them around and see how they feel. The king may undress me, but I will no longer expose this body to the gaze of desperate men. The king may undress me, but I will no longer expose this body to the gaze of desperate men. Right? There's an intactness in that. There is a return to deep sense of worth, right? And a coming in from the overexposure that often happens, right? Restoration of virginity is a bit of a veiled state, right? You're returning to, you're coming in from being really exposed and kind of cheapened by that. You're cultivating, potentizing. What was another one? Oh, she is for everyone, but I am only for the worthy. She is for everyone, but I am only for the worthy. And where that, if you can feel that, it's this understanding of goddess, deep feminine, God love, all, this bigger field is for everyone. Everyone deserves it. It is for everyone. The love, the cherishing, the adoration. But we are distinct. And when you come back and you restore virginity, you start to have this deep understanding that you are not for everyone. You are only for the worthy, whatever that means to you. And there's another video where I discuss more, it's called Who is Worthy of You? And you can go check that out if you want to, because it goes way more into what that actually means. But what is the worthy? What does that mean to you? Who should be welcome into your inner sanctum? Welcome into your body. This is what restoration of virginity allows, is to reconsider that question. To come back in and ask and consider, how do I feel about what I've been doing? How do I feel about what's been coming into me? How do I, what is true? And by separating out, we can actually, and moving away from all other things, coming back fully into our own field, we can start to actually feel what's true there. Okay, there was a third one. What was it? Shoot. Ah, I knew it. I didn't write them down because I'm on the road and just 1 second. Ah, there it is. Okay. Don't ask one man, one lover, one moment even to be everything when all of creation wants to make love to you. Don't ask one man, one lover, one moment to be everything when all of creation wants to make love to you. Right? Restoration of virginity, if we understand, it's not a turning away from lovemaking at all. It is an attunement and a reconnection to the greater lovemaking that we're living inside of. If we can slow down enough, become attuned enough, subtle enough, feel ourselves enough, feel creation enough to let that be known to us truly. So I leave you with that. Some considerations around restoration of virginity, because I've really been in it. And yeah, I'm heading out on the road a little bit more soon. This is a quick stop in Ashland, so I'm looking forward to sharing this with you, this journey with you. It's a really big change for me. It feels enormous. If you want to join, next Sunday, the 17th of July, is the Unburdening of Witch. It's the third in the Grace Walker series, and we're going to be unburdening the archetype of witch. There'll be some more videos to talk about that. I'll put the link below. And there's a continuity here. We've unburdened warrior, we've unburdened, which is anger, we've unburdened sexuality, sexual potency, lover. We're unburdening witch, the healer, the wild, the force of nature that you are. And then the fourth one, we're going to unburden pilgrim. We're going to unburden what the call to the spirit, the call to the spiritual path, or the call to the soul path. It can be very burdened, and can be a burdened journey. So we're going to do that. So you are welcome to join. And for any of those, I'll put it below. And yeah, here we go. If you want to let me know if you've restored virginity, or if you're thinking about doing it, you can do it. I'm reading the comments. I actually often don't respond because of just the way that life is, but I read them and I appreciate them a lot, and I am inspired by you all very much, and I feel loved. I feel really loved by you. So anyway, blessed be. I'll see you next video.